I think people would be surprised to know that there are lots of modern day reports of upright hairy creatures in our woodlands. It leant out of the greenery like this. It wasn't, you couldn't see it in full form. The top of it leant out, and it was very, he looked like a man and an ape that had been pushed together. And he looked, and he said there was this creature standing there, Jeff. And I couldn't describe it. He said it wasn't a dog because it was standing up on two legs, but it definitely had some kind of protuberance here. But look at RAF Alconbury. From the 1970s, people of serving soldiers have reported what they either call the hard stand monster, the upright standing wolf, on that base. And each witness says that that creature ran off to the north woods. So it took the same route each time.
You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and now it's time for the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm Neil Ward, and I'm joined once again by Andy Chaplin and Ben Emlyn-Jones. Welcome, guys, and how are you both?
Hi, Neil.
You go first, Andy. I think it's pretty similar. You go first, mate.
Yeah, just been back from the UFO Academy in High Elms in Watford, and Ben was there and had a great time. Yeah,
it was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful, it's a great conference in the most beautiful location. It's lovely old manor house, and there's a beautiful lawn, and there's trees all around it, and there's a terrace. And we were up till 1 a.m. talking. Well, I was half asleep, but the rest of you guys were talking. It was really, and we took to the host and to the other speakers, and it was such good fun. Yeah.
Who was the top speaker for you?
Well, for me, I'm not sure. I mean, it's possibly Matt Hurley, even though I disagreed with a lot of what he said.
It's quite factual and evidential, which I quite liked.
David Griffin, it was good to see David Griffin. It was great to see him again because he's such a recluse. He's very difficult to get hold of. And he hardly ever makes public appearances these days. So it's really, really great to see him. It really, really was.
Yeah, I think.
Did you get his email?
I've got his email. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we could have him on again. Neil, have we had him before, David Griffin?
No, we haven't. I've been wanting to get
good guess,
David Griffin on for some time. Yeah.
He'd be very
He knows all about the black goo and everything like that. So he's like one of the pioneering researchers into that area. So I thought, when I found out that he was going to be there, that's why I said, grab his email and kidnap him or do something.
Well, I did have a chance to mention this, but I mean, I'm sorry, Neil, I didn't have a chance. But you know, he's got a really interesting idea. He's just written a book. Or I think there's a book coming soon. He's connected this whole thing to the Falkland Islands and black goo, and the Marconi Company, where there was in just the space of just 8 years, there were like 23 deaths, and they were very suspicious. One was an extremely bizarre and very gruesome suicide, and there were many, many others that were really weird, and it doesn't make sense. I think he's uncovered something really, really strange going on there.
I remember that well because my dad worked for Marconi around the time these deaths were occurring. I remember being a bit concerned, thinking,
he's all right.
That's not good. Had no idea it's connected at that time to anything to do with something called black goo or anything like that. So
I can ask somebody on our local Awake and Aware group in Hertfordshire, because he used to work for Marconi as well. He doesn't anymore, but he's an older generation guy, so he might have some information on it.
Yeah. I mean, he might have signed the Official Secrets Act, but it's worth asking. You never know. You never know. He might do it anonymously or something. Cover himself in black goo, then come on the screen. Right. Okay. So moving from black goo to other strange things that lurk in the woods, and this time it's strange things that lurk in the woods in the UK. We've heard of things like Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Yowies all around the world, Australia, Canada, United States. But this time, people might be surprised to learn that there have been reports of Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yowies, whatever you want to call them, but they're actually in the UK. And joining us from the north of England is Deborah Hatswell. Deborah, thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for asking me to come on. I think the creature you're describing is what in history in the UK we would have called the woodwose. So a tall, hairy, ape-man, caveman type thing that's been seen without history. I think people would be surprised to know that there are lots of modern day reports of upright, hairy creatures in our woodlands.
And how did you become involved in all this then?
Well, people ask me that if I had an interest in cryptids or anything like that, and I didn't. I was only 15. As a 15-year-old girl, so it would have been 1982. I lived in Salford, which is an ordinary town in the northwest of England. There's nothing rural about it, absolutely nothing. And I should have been going into school. If you think on back then, we used to do O levels and GCSEs, and you do the mock a few months before, and then normally by that time in school, you're not really doing lessons, and the teacher's just rolling the TV in for another film. I just decided I wasn't going in. I was a bit willful. And I just thought, I'm not going in. I'm just going to spend the rest of the afternoon in the park. And that's kind of what I did. I was with a friend, ordinary day, probably May, June time. Nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever, completely normal. And I noticed a movement in the corner of my eye. And when I looked eyes with something. And I didn't know what to call it back then, but it was something that kind of, it leant out of the greenery like this. It wasn't, you couldn't see it in full form. The top of it leant out, and it was very, it looked like a man and an ape that had been pushed together in some way. I only looked at him for seconds. I didn't sit there and, gaze at him lovingly and no mobile phones. Honestly, I was so frightened without thinking. I think it was primal. I pushed my friend to the floor, and I was up and I was running. I was running in the opposite direction, and I looked back for self-preservation to see if he was coming after me. And he just went back into the greenery, and he was completely gone. He was gone. And he looked me up like maybe Heidelbergensis or early hominid of some form. Completely hair covered, very thick muscle. I distinctly remember thick muscle here and here and here. Very pronounced brow ridge. Normal teeth, not like canine teeth or anything out of Amma House of Horror, nothing like that. But he was huge. He was really, really big. And over the years, people have told me he was probably a homeless man or a man in a suit. And he wasn't any of those things. I don't know what he was, but he wasn't anything that could easily be explained away.
What colour was the fur that you saw?
He had very, very dark brown hair. So I only saw him from his chest only. I didn't see legs or arms or any of that. I seen him from here. And it was really, really dark brown. But where the sun caught it, it was almost red or auburn. It was really strange. You could see skin through it. So not like a gorilla where you can't see anything through the hair. It was distinct skin. And luckily for me, 2 years later, another lady saw a creature in exactly the same place. And she described the thing that she saw. It was stood out under a light. And she said it had a pot belly. It had male genitalia. It was completely naked, hairy from head to toe. And she described it as looking like a chimp and a man, almost combined. Now, there's nothing in that area that would account for that. Honestly, back then, I was really hoping someone was going to say, there was a circus, or, there was a show in town, or something escaped from Bellevue, or something. That would have made it much easier for me. I could have just put it to bed and gone on with my little life. But I never was able to do that. So I just thought, I don't know, I didn't know what to do. So I just started looking for other people. 15, I had no clue. I went to the library. Because there was no internet back in 1982 or anything. So I went to the library and I asked them, and they just gave me a stick of the dump. And I knew then I was on my own. I knew then I didn't think I'd be still doing it all these years later, though. I thought I'd find an answer, put it to bed, and away I'd go. I'd have just carried on. I probably would have been in human resources or something like that. Would have just carried on with my career. It didn't pan out like that for me. I remember going home, and my mum said when I came in through the door, she thought a man had got me. She said I was absolutely hysterical, and she thought a man in the park had got me. And I couldn't get the words out to explain to her what I'd seen. And I had to go back the next day because it was right next to my school. And I was absolutely terrified. I thought he was around every corner and every bush. And I've seen him. So he's going to want to get me to stop me from telling people what I've seen. And that stayed with me. It took me 25 years to go back. I went back in 2015.
Are there any reports of UFO activity in that area?
Yes, lots of paranormal activity.
Yeah.
Lots of UFO activity. There's a mansion there, Andy, an old mansion. I think it's Grecian. But before that, there's always been a building on the site from the 15th century. John Dee was involved, and it said that he conjured a number of how did they say it? He conjured a number of demons from that property. Well, I don't think he was with Edward Kelly at the time. I think it was when he was exiled and sent to Manchester. So I started looking back, and I realised it was a plague field. So they buried the dead there at the plague. A wooden house had gone on it in 16-something. That burnt down. And then the present mansion, I think was then, was built on it. So yeah, there was, I spoke to somebody just last year, and she said to me, what year was it? I said, 1982. She said, my ground lived a mile away in the streets, as we called it. So like Coronation Street, lots of terraces. And she said she was there one day. She looked up the stairs, and she said it wasn't a werewolf. It was far more frightening than that. I don't know what it was. It was all black in colour, and it peeped round the top of the stairs at her. And her grandmother, who was a traveller lady, a Roman, like my family, said, well, don't worry, child, it can't hurt you. Can't do anything to you. And now, all these years on, I wonder if it's all connected in some way. You know, I don't know. I'm still looking for answers, I suppose.
Just for those who don't know, John Dee, I think, signed off as 007, which is where Ian Fleming got the James Bond 007 thing was. And the reason why he was actually a spy for Queen Elizabeth I.
Was there?
He was an English, I've got his Wikipedia actually, an English mathematician, astronomer, teacher, astrologer, and here we go, occultist and alchemist.
Outside the hall, there were 4 stones, and they were each different. One was limestone, one was granite, one I can't remember. There's one that I can never remember, and the other one was obsidian, a huge piece of obsidian. And I know Edward Kelly used to scry with obsidian, and they're not there now. The stones have gone. I've tried tracing them, can't trace them. So they're probably in somebody's garden now or something like that, or in a museum. And I wondered if it was I know that the line of Albany, the ley line, runs right through it, right through the centre of the house. And I wondered if it was to do with that. Is it a place where phenomena happens because of that particular area? If it's something about that particular area that either puts it out or attacks it like a magnet. I don't know. But the reports just kept coming in for me. They just spread out across the UK, and then that went worldwide, and it just became my job, really, in a way. I think it was my way of coping with it.
Was there a predominance of a certain area that threw up lots of sightings?
People seem to think that there aren't any sightings pre about 1940, and that's wrong. There are. There are, and they were all across the UK. I do believe since about 2014 in the UK, Bigfoot's become a word. The British Bigfoot has become a word. So anything that's upright, covered in hair, will fall under that umbrella name. It doesn't work for me. It's an American name. So they're not Sasquatch, they're not anything like that. Each and every country that I've worked in, every single one of them has a history of like a wood wolf or a wild man. Like the Alaskans, they have the hairy man. In Russia, they have the Almas. And Europe, they call the Leshy. And in the UK, they will call the wolves, wood wolves. And I think it just means man of the wood in Old English. It isn't anything, And they were druidic, like. So they are mentioned in Pliny's diary. They're also mentioned in the Gauls mentioned them when they came over to Scotland, and they call them the Sastra, which were these feral humans that would steal fish from the nets and run off with the matrons from the villages. So it's there in our history, and it's modern times where we have the ability now to start communicating globally. And then the sighting reports that you're thinking, well, how come I'm reporting the same thing that the Native Americans were reporting all those years ago? Well, trying to put all of that information into one place and make it easy to understand is really hard. That's the hardest battle I am. Each individual witness has their own name for the thing that they do.
So I was just going to say quickly, Sasquatch, I think, is a Native American name. Yeah. So in terms of British, we shouldn't be calling it Sasquatch. Did you say wolfman?
They call it the wood wolves, but most people just call it the UK wild man.
UK wild, right?
Yeah. So a lot of people will say it was a wild man. He was completely naked and he was running from one set of trees to the other, but it was all covered in hair. And when you look at the descriptions from the witnesses, that's why I started to collate them, because I wanted to see if there was a pattern within them. Patterns are how my brain works. And I realized there was a pattern within them. Some people report these big 8-foot tall, ape-like creatures. They'll use the word gorilla, ape, baboon, bear, wolf, anything that's really, really big. And then we have something that seems to be about 5.5 to about 6.5 feet tall, very caveman-like, even said to be wearing loincloths that seem to do the same thing. In all of the cases, the creature sees the human being and heads in the opposite direction. So you've got that split second, and then you've got to try and get as much information out of that witness as you can from them seeing.
As far on the actual nature of these apparitions and what they are, there's no doubt in my mind that in North America and in parts of Asia and in many, maybe Australia and other places, there is literally a cryptid. There's literally a species of animal, which an upright simian ape type creature, which is living, very elusive, avoiding human contact. And in those parts of the world, there's a huge amount of open space and wilderness where they could live without any contact with the humans. Now, in Britain, it's a different matter. I mean, I'm not 100% sure it's completely impossible, but we have a much more densely populated landscape. There's I think there's 1,800 people per square mile or something, when in the United States it's like 400 or something per square mile on average. So I can hear something whispering. Did you?
I heard that.
You heard it too, Neil?
Yeah, very rigid.
What was that?
Indiscernible, but I could hear something whispering. Yeah.
Looks like a woman's voice whispering.
Yeah, I mean, my phone just went off, so I put it into airport mode simply so I don't get interrupted. And then shortly afterwards, I heard this whispering, and I thought, well,
I'm on my desktop.
Maybe it's the suspect.
Maybe some EVP all of a sudden. We can listen to the recording, see if it's on the record. You may or may not be on the recording. But anyway, on the side.
You mean, Ben? There's not enough habitat in the UK. There aren't enough food sources. There's not enough water sources. It's completely impossible. Absolutely.
What I would suspect is, the reason I asked about the UFO thing earlier is that because I listen to a lot of the American Sasquatch and Native American reports of Bigfoot, if you want to call it that, and a lot of people are reporting at the same time that they're seeing Bigfoot, or very much in the same area and the same time period. They're also reporting UFOs, greys, aliens, and that kind of thing. I think Ben's right. I think in terms of, would there be some kind of tribe that's never been discovered within the UK, I would say highly unlikely. Not impossible, but highly unlikely, due to the fact that we're quite a small island. I'm veering much more towards the fact that whatever these beings are, they might be within the band of ghosts, spirits, ETs, interdimensionals, alien, within that frequency.
When I started out, Andy, I was looking for an ape. I was looking for a chimpanzee or an undiscovered primate, And Ben's right. All across the world, there is the space for that, an undiscovered primate. There isn't space for that in the UK. I was working a job with the Discovery Channel about 3 months ago. Then they were filming a program called Naked and Afraid, and they were filming it in Australia. And during the filming, they found a huge nest. Now, when I say huge, it's probably 8-9 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's just all of the debris that's been dragged off the floor. Now, there's no eggs in it. Birds make a bit of a mess when they make it. There was nothing. It was absolutely clean. And the producer said, what they do is, and the camera don't know, they always have a team of guards. So no animal can get in and get you, while they're filming and stuff like that. And one of the rangers came in and said, no, stop filming. You can't talk about that. And he was like, what?
Oh, wow.
That's a primate nest. It's been made by a primate.
So where were they filming this? Where were they filming this?
I can go and look it up and tell you. It's the latest series of Naked and Afraid for anybody who watches the program.
And the ranger says you can't talk about it.
Can't talk about it. They had scientists in.
Yeah.
And the word he used was primates. Now, us human beings are primates. In the UK, would it surprise you to know that less than 20% of the UK is urban? That astounded me at the time. Less than 20% of the UK is urban. And we haven't discussed subterranean. Now, I'm like you guys. I, in the beginning, was convinced it was flesh and blood only. There was no dimensional. I don't feel like that anymore. I've been in the game too long and I've spoken to too many witnesses. For some people, the experience that they have is very flesh and blood. But for others, it isn't. It's a creature that vanishes in front of them. Almost like it's been sucked from the atmosphere. I've heard that quite a few times.
It's interesting,
Yeah, there's so many theories, and I think I'd be a fool to dismiss any of them until I literally sit down with one and they tell me what they are. I'd be a fool, wouldn't I, not to look at all of the theories.
See, I've been through a similar journey, Deb. I mean, I did really entertain the idea there was a real cryptid in Great Britain, as impossible as it might be. And it was you who convinced me, I remember. But I mean, on reflection, I've also started to doubt that. I mean, I think Nick Hayes and his encounter, where he had his encounter in Lye Valley, it is literally, there's no green corridor out of Lye Valley. There's the golf course, but you go across the golf course, and there's like Marston, and then there's Headington, and there's Cowley Road. It's literally, there's no green corridor out of there. But his experience was extremely persuasive, not least because I know the man and I took him to the area and he reacted emotionally to being present, even though we went there in daylight. And also there's and Andy's mentioned the fact that some Bigfoot-like creatures, even though they're obviously not Bigfoot, they're obviously zooform phenomena, as Jonathan Downes calls them, have been seen and associated with other paranormal phenomena. And for example, the Presque Isle sighting of 1965, where some people in the car saw a UFO land in the distance behind the trees, and a Bigfoot came out and attacked their car. And believe it or not, there's evidence in terms of the claw marks on the chassis and the paintwork being scratched and things like that. Yeah, very scary event. So I mean, even something that could be things could be solid and they may have a fur and maybe flesh and blood. This doesn't mean they're necessarily physical. That permanently physical, they can become etheric. The etheric and physical objects can actually interchange, which is very, very strange, but it does happen with things such as, I mean, people say ghosts, ghosts are like etheric and you just walk through them. There's people who've shaken the hands of ghosts and they feel normal.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. I know, and that's what fascinates me about it. I got boxed off in the early days that what I saw was a Bigfoot and nothing more. I can't stand that word now, British people, because people think that's the only thing that I do. If it was purely flesh and blood, I wouldn't have branched out into the other subjects. If I was dealing with just an ape and nothing more than an ape, well, I'd have kept it on a biological, scientific level. And like you, Ben, you sit down with people and you look, Charmaine Fraser, for instance.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
That was unbelievable. Her experience is unbelievable. It's really amazing.
And she talks about that experience to the fact that it shaped her life, and she actually works in the mental health field. It's changed my life. It changed Nick Hayes' life. There are a core group of witnesses who've done everything they can to find out what they saw that day. There's a lady called Karen Horton. She lives up in the northeast of England. She lives in Stanley, Consett kind of area. So kind of Durhamish. She was 6 years old. She was playing out in an area called Samfield Lee with a number of girls. She looked up a tree and she said up there was this wild man. She's never used the word Bigfoot, never used the word ape, gorilla. She said he was a wild man. And she's been trying to paint him for 44 years. so that she can show people what she saw that day. She said he had a tool in his hand, like a bone tool, and he just looked at her. He didn't do anything to her, he just looked at her. And she ran off then, and the other girls with her didn't see him. So that was meant for her in some way. Or did she connect to something? And that was why she was able to see him. But all these years later, it is still very predominant in her mind because it changes. It's like a UFO abduction. You can't walk away from it. You know, you need answers.
So I've found where some of Naked and Afraid has been filmed. So a lot of it is United States. So we've got Louisiana, Bayou, Florida Everglades, Seminole County, Alabama, also Panama and Nicaragua as well as locations.
The new season that's just been filmed, I think it's Best of the Best or something like that. I'll find it for you.
Yeah.
I'll send it over and show it to you. It's really interesting because they've left it in the program. Yeah, they've left it in the program, and I don't know at the time I didn't just pull that clip off the dailies. I don't know why I didn't do, but I don't own it. They own it, don't they? But I was thinking, Debbie, go back and find it and share it, because if they cut it, a lot of people believe that, and I did too back in the day, that there was a lot of structures in the woodlands that were being made by Bigfoot, and we've been able to get rid of maybe 99% of them. So I realised I had to do a real in-depth course on what was early man building on this island 14,000 years ago. And most human beings, before we ever built, we made a debris pile of hay, sticks, debris. It's warm. You get in it like a compost heap, and it's fine for the night. And then you move on to the next area. And what they were showing in Australia was exactly that. It was an old debris. So I even went back and looked what was Heidelberg against doing, because we can prove that they were here in the UK. And they were kind of in between. So they were building like brush shelters. And then obviously they advanced a bit. So you know that if you start to put sticks in, the shelter's stronger. So you'd stay there for a couple of days, go through different that, and you'd move on to the next one. I have to balance that between how do you get one footprint in the middle of a snowy field?
It seems impossible, doesn't it? On its own.
Like a structure that completely disappears overnight. So there's a chap in Wigan where I live. No interesting cryptids or anything like that. Started having real strange things happening to him in the woods, and he got in touch with me because things were happening at home. Something was literally banging on the wall of the house, but it wasn't setting off the CCTV. So he said that sometimes when he was in the woodland, these like more like a teepee shape would appear and disappear overnight. So I said to him, let's test the energy around it. Let's have a test. Let's see what it does. And he broke his phone. So he tried to replicate it a number of times. And each time he took it back to the phone shop, he said it had been hit by a magnetic charge. But this is just wooden stick.
Today's the best day of my life. Woohoo! Listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Join Andy and Neil every month on the Paranormal Peep Show, part of the Paranormal UK Radio Network, for fun, frolics, and lots of information about weird stuff, UFOs, ghosts, and things that go bump in the night and everything associated with them. Fascinating guests, fascinating talk, fascinating information.
Welcome to part 2 of the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and we're talking to Deborah Hatswell about strange sightings around the UK that could be attributed to something called Bigfoot or big hairy men or big beasts and things like that. Deborah, one of the things that was curious to me was, has there been a kind of investigation into the people that do these sightings or have these experiences? Are they any way deemed to be psychic or clairvoyant in any way? I'm just wondering what they're having, or what you, indeed yourself had maybe of a clairvoyant kind of experience rather than a physical Bigfoot padding through the fields.
Yeah, I would say so, most definitely. Like I say, when it started for me, I'd had experiences as a child that you would class as paranormal, and I never put that together with the incident that happened when he was 15. It was just working with other witnesses. I started to notice the patterns. I have a condition called Erling syndrome. So if I read a book, I see the rivers between the lines before I see the letters. So my brain catches onto patterns. And I realized that people who were having very flesh and blood type experiences were very logical. and scientific, and they wanted the proof and the video. And people who were almost having what I would call like visitations from Sasquatch or, you know, whatever name, tended to be very naturey, you know, pagan, Wiccan, into the old religion, going back in time. Looking at England as a whole, we get more reports now that are more, I don't know what word I would give it, kind of sits between this ape and this sentient being. Kind
Like
of.
hybrid.
Yeah, kind of a hybrid of the two. Ben mentioned it before.
Mm.
What if it's something that can change its metaphysical shape?
It's interesting that for you, what you said about the types of people who see different phenomena. So, for example, in that case, I expect you'd expect someone like Richard D. Hall or Timothy Good to see an alien, whereas Maria Wheatley would be the kind of person more like to see a woodwose, a woodwose.
Yeah. And are we dealing with an entity or a being that will show itself in a physical sense depending on its agenda? So for some people, the strangeness, some people will have an experience when they're in the 20s, the 30s, or the 40s. But when they were a child, they would dream about a wolf in the bedroom, or they would see a wolf within the bedroom. There was always something scary in the bedroom. And I started to realize that a lot of the people were just having experiences with these cryptic creatures. So I'd start to ask about anything happened when you were younger. Have you ever had any strange experiences? And they'd start to open up and tell me about paranormal experiences or experiences of the UFO or any other form of, you know, strange, unexplained activity that's out there. And I tend to find that the more open people are, the more accepting they are, the easier and nicer the event is. So for me, I had no knowledge. So I saw a monster that was coming to get me. But somebody else, maybe who's had an understanding of our history, going back generations. I give you, for instance, I spoke to two witnesses, and it's the same situation. And you know Neil Robson, we all know the Bollum Lake area. And
Yes, that's an interesting combination of the two, isn't it? Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, there was a couple out enjoying the evening, we shall say, within the woodlands. And as they were enjoying the evening, the lady saw something big and hairy that was watching them. She screamed and panicked, so he pulled his pants up and set off after it. Now, on the other side of the UK, you've got a lady who's she's I would call her an earth mother. She's very into her spiritualness. And she was also enjoying the woodland with her partner and was spied upon. And her attitude was, oh, she's just the wild man looking at lovers within the woods. So there's all that kind of thing comes into it. If you've got a knowledge of what you've seen, it's really easy. But for me, it wasn't, because people, it was an alien, it was this, it was that. I spoke to you guys, could help me with something. I'm working a case at the moment and I'm trying to trace something from the Unexplained magazine series. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I used to read that. It shows out of interest from a young age,
So I had a chap get in touch with me only about 6 weeks ago, and he lives in my local area, Wigan Way. And he was moving up to Scotland, and he said, before I go, Dev, I'd love it if you could meet me at the area. And I'll tell you the experience I had when I was a 10-year-old boy. So he'd later in life had quite a few UFO experiences. But when he was a 10-year-old kid, a lot of us in this part of it's mining land here. So all of the estates then, and then it just would roll up. So we get to the next kind of new town or new thing. So the green belt's in between me and him. He's 10-year-old, it's 10 o'clock at night, and his friend said, I dare you to run to the bottom at Farmfield and run back so you can go the furthest. And he said, as I set off, I saw this red light. Now, we mentioned before about lights and orbs and energy being connected to these beings. And he thought at first it was somebody really tall smoking a cigarette in the dark. And he said, and as he thought that, something said to him, look to your left, look to your left. And he looked, and he said there was this creature standing there, Jeb. And I couldn't describe it. He said it wasn't a dog because it was standing up on two legs, but it definitely had some kind of protuberance here. And he said it didn't frighten him, but it being there was frightening enough. So obviously he's run back, and he's kind of held that together. When we went out to the site, and I said to him, show me where the creature was standing there. And I said, show me where you lived as a child. And he went, that house there. And I thought, oh my God, you can get to the bedroom from here. Anything else ever happened at the house? Oh, yeah, it's funny you should say that. We've had ball lightning go through the house twice.
Oh, wow.
Boy, didn't leave a mark. But the house on the end gable completely lost its gable and they had to rebuild it. Now I'm thinking, how can ball lightning go right through your house, not affect your curtains or anything? Anything else happened? Well, there was another time when we were there and the back door just flew open and the mortise lock was on. And the dog started growling at the door before it flew open. So we started out with just this man who's just had this one experience at 10. And you realise he's had a series of experiences from being born right the way through. So he's probably my age. He's nearly 6, and still having them.
How old was the house, roughly?
I would say it was a new, but I would say it had gone in after the war. So I was looking at like a council estate.
Yeah.
And new, what would they call them? Around here, I think they call them like new towns. So it would have been built pre the war. Once the mining land was okay to build on, they would have put it on. And it's a nature reserve now, so lots of fishing down there. And it is a lovely area. But there are so many people down there that have seen this dog-like, snouted creature that, we don't know what names to give it. It's not... He said a couple of weeks later, the only thing he can put it to is a couple of weeks later, his brother used to collect the Unexplained magazine. And there was an article in it describing 4 types of alien. One was your typical grey. One was your Nordic. One was robotic. And the other one was animalistic. And he said that's the closest thing he'd ever seen that represents what he saw that day. It wasn't a big giant. He said it wasn't much taller than him. And he was a 10-year-old boy. And I said, did it like growl at you or anything? He went, no, it just looked as shocked to see me as I did to see it. And that's exactly how it felt for me. And I was on old mining land. And I'm wondering if the disturbance over the years, was kind of brought something to up. I mean, he's completely normal. He's not the type of chap you'd avoid in a pub. But he's had these extraordinary experiences, and quite a lot of them have been UFO based.
And did you say that people are seeing these entities and you suspect they're seeing it according to their own belief systems or what they're expecting to see? Is that...
The way I can make it easy to understand, if you walk out in the street now, Andy, and you see a creature, your brain will go, is it a wolf? Is it a lion? Is it a bear? You'll flick through your Rolodex of all the things that it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard of Bigfoot. Maybe if I'd heard of like the abominable snowman, but that was, all the way in the Himalayas. There's nothing like that in England. So, yeah, I think people are very good at putting words on things. It was this, it was that, it was definitely this, depending on their research and where they sit within that. So I always ask the person, what would you say it was? That's what I always say for the witness. What would you call it? What would you say it was? And invariably, there's always an animal word and the word man.
So dog man, wolfman.
Yeah, wolfman. Yeah, always. He's always a man animal.
It makes me think of, and I'm going to look this up, of the hairy hands. Has anyone heard of the hairy hands?
Yes.
I've got reports around there, Andy. In the same area where the hairy hands have been seen, there are a number of reports. And all those reports have taken place over a 30-year period. And they're always in January, February, Ben.
Yeah, here we are. Hairy Hands of Dartmoor, a folklore tale about a pair of disembodied hairy hands that are said to attack drivers on a stretch of road between Post Bridge and 2 bridges in Devon, England. It grabs the steering wheels and causes accidents and potentially fatalities. The myth has been passed down through generations. Wow. Yeah.
And then you've got people in that area who reporting either wolf-like creatures or Bigfoot-like creatures. So the one lady, there's an area called Woody Bay. It's right on the top. It's an old hotel that's not used anymore. And I think it was during COVID. It was either COVID or the year after. She went for a walk and she was really annoyed at her husband about 10 o'clock at night, middle of nowhere. You're out on the cliffs in Devon. She climbs the gate. Dog refuses to follow her. And she said, as she's walking down this black lane, there's no lights in her out like that. She hears this. She said, I felt like I'd walked into something. The atmosphere completely changed and I could hear this clicking noise coming from up on the embankment. and something was answering it from down below. And she said it felt like I walked into a hunting party. So by the time I'd spoken to them, most of the time by people found me, they'd gone beyond proof. They want an answer. And she kept saying, will it come to the house? And no, it won't come to the I think you just walked into something. And it was looking at those reports made me realise that whatever was going on was happening around the new moons of Jan Feb. So maybe it's something connected to us human beings on this island, you know, that's connected to us that we still feel sometimes. We still tune into it at times. No difference to seeing a UFO or a ghost in my eyes, to be honest.
Well, it makes sense. And Britain is said to be the most paranormal place in the world. People call it the heart chakra of the world. There's some energy centre here. For those who are conspiratorial minded, this is the headquarters of the world government, the Illuminati, things like that.
Is there any kind of data that kind of connects these sightings with rivers? I mean, I was thinking Dartmoor River, and if so, would the river be something to do with the paranormal, or would it simply be because towns and villages are established areas? Yeah.
I had all the same thoughts, Neil. So I took myself to college and learned about archaeology and the early Brits and, you know, their foraging routes and things like that. If we're looking for a flesh and blood creature moving between, so let's say the Pennines of central England and it's moving out to the coast in whatever direction, you're tripling your food sources because you've got all your woodland food, your hedgerow food. And as you get towards that salt water, every mammal on the earth has to have salt. The salt itself could be the draw here. You also can eat every single seaweed in the UK. It's all edible. So you're tripling your food sources. But, like you said, is it because around estuaries and rivers we get more people, so more people see them? So like on the River Medway, for instance, the last place in the world that we should be getting, the Isle of Grain, Poole and Kent, no way there'd be a creature there, but they're being reported. You know, and the neighbours are reporting them and talking to each other about it. And it's just, to them, it's normal. It's a normal thing. I couldn't understand that. So I started to look at that. When I started the map, I thought, I started the map a long time ago when it was a big piece of paper on the wall. And I used to stick a pin in because I wanted to know what can I get from there to there without being seen.
Sounds very X-Files. I like it.
Yeah. You know, Andy, he's still there. I think I've had 1 million views look at it. Because people use it, they'll think, where can I go this weekend? I want to go somewhere where there's been a UFO report. So they'll jump on my map and go, oh, you know, like say Oxfordshire. So since I spoke to Nick, I've had a conversation with a lady from Wantage, and she's near the old RAF base there, which interests me because a lot of these reports take place around old Ministry of Defence land.
Nice, that's interesting.
I usually I don't really support the BBC because it's very often our left woke Marxist nonsense.
Yeah.
But in one particular case, I have actually come across Uncanny, which I actually quite like.
That's a good series.
And Uncanny USA, so they've got a US version, a series 4, case 4, The Hairy Man. I just wondered if you've seen it and what your reaction is on that.
I actually did some research for the programme. Yeah, I do. People will hit me up because they know I've got reports and they'll say, right, Deb, we're looking at doing a programme in the UK. You know, can you put us a few cases together that's worth us coming over to look at? So I put them in touch with a guy in Lincolnshire. He saw something, Scorby, the area is, and he actually drew it. I love it when they draw it because I say, is there any chance you could draw what you saw or fire something online that looks like it? So I know that they're doing a UK Wildman episode. I'm not sure when it's out though. And and they've got the Paranormal Court and Camera. They're just about to do one. I've just done the interview for that. So they'll get me on as an expert, or they'll get me on just to research what else have you got in that area, Jem. You know, can you trace it back to history? It's a really enjoyable part of my job. I absolutely love it. You know, so it gives me access to like newspaper articles that I wouldn't normally be able to see, you know. And it's fantastic to see people in the UK finally coming forward and go, well, actually, I saw it as well. You know.
It's interesting about the military connection because, like, when I was in Stairways to the Stars, I met a chap, American guy. He'd talked about encountering like a Bigfoot-like creature near a military. I remember because the name of the military base was Leominster. Now there's a place called the RAF Leominster here in the UK, and it's obviously the American one's named after the British town, as many American towns are. There was as far as Oxfordshire goes, there's a very famous sighting actually, which I actually visited the location of. I made a video about it in Bagley Woods, which is just to the south of Oxford. You can actually walk to it from where I am. Matthew Arnold in 1877 saw a big hairy creature there. Now, Matthew Arnold is a famous poet or writer who's
I remember you telling me about
and I remember he recorded he's walking to Boars Hill from Oxford and through the footpath. It's now a proper road, but in those days it was just a footpath. And he describes exactly what you saw, the very same sort of thing as you saw, Deb, and many other people have seen. As long
you look at RAF. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but look at RAF Alconbury. So in the 1970s, serving soldiers have reported what they either call the hard stand monster, the upright standing wolf, on that base. And each witness says that creature ran off to the north woods. So it took the same route each time. One of them saw it while they were on security duty, and he said it bounded the wall. He definitely heard it, and it screamed in his face. Another soldier said that he saw it in the munitions, and he said, I was surrounded by weapons and it wouldn't have entered my head to shoot it. He was so shocked at seeing it. Dennis Pribber, he was called, and he spent months after driving around trying to find it, But now because of the map, I can say, right, well, there was a bear report there a mile and a half away. We've got a standing wolf report here. What are they experiencing? And is it connected to the base? Are the military in the UK developing these creatures in any way, shape, or form? Or trying to keep them hidden in some way?
There's an episode of Sherlock Holmes about that. It was quite interesting. The modern version with Benedict Cumberbatch. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's always Wolfman. You say it's something man. So there's Wolfman, Ape Man, Mothman, Cat Owl Man, etc. And of course, I don't know about it being developed by the military as some kind of breeding, some kind of special creature, because they do have dogs which are very fierce and they use them on the battlefields, and to smell out the enemy as well. They can smell where their hideouts are and things like that, And if a prisoner of war escapes, they can track them down and things like that. But as far as breeding special creatures, I don't know, and especially because these creatures have been seen in areas like. I mean, you mentioned the Wolfman. I mean, all you know about the Bempton phenomenon, Paul Sinclair, and what he's the fact that old stinker. This werewolf has been seen. Well, it's like a werewolf, like a lycanthrope, a big humanoid, half wolf, half man. Been seen near Hull several times for over 150 years, but it just turned up again a couple of years ago. I remember. Old Stinker is called because it smells terrible.
If you don't know the area and you don't have current witnesses in the area, that's what you'll find. You'll find the Old Stinker and the Beast of Barston Drain and the Flixton Werewolf. But if you look for about Saltfleet Marsh, go up past Bempton, on each of the areas where we have the RAF bases, this is where the reports come in, this wolf-like creature. Some people say they can see it, and the next second they can't see it. And then you tie in the two strange mystery men who went missing. You got Russell Bowling. He went missing and had a pen drive. After that base had been closed and concreted over, he had a pen drive of photographs from inside the bay. Never been found. Another guy called Simon, his car was found in the same car park at Bempton. He's never been found. Yeah. It's just, you get these areas of very strange, as Paul Sinclair will say himself. We get these areas, Cannock Chase, lots of places in the UK where lots of activity kind of takes place. And then you start to look at Kye Green in Staffordshire. You've got the Pigman. And then you've got you've got all of the connotations of the old war cemetery there and the things that people see there. It's a never-ending subject. You get weeks out of it.
Have you heard of the hairy man of St. Trinian's, which I thought was just this is a film,
about the naughty girls.
Yeah, so I thought it was
a bit of a St. Trinian.
Yeah, I thought it was just about the naughty girls, but apparently this is the Isle of Man. St. Trinian's is an actual place.
You've been there, haven't you, Ben?
Oh yes, I went there for the first time in 2023. Never been there before. It was really amazing.
Never heard of that story. The Trinian.
They call it the Finuderi.
I know about the black dog. It's known as Morrie-Doo.
Yeah,
It's very similar to black shuck. In you see in Norfolk, there've been sightings of this thing called black shuck, which is one-eyed dog. The same thing has been seen in the Isle of Man called Morrie-Doo.
Yeah,
it's very fierce, very mean.
This is very different. So this is the Finudori, and it's described as a hairy human-like entity thought to possess great strength. Weirdly, on this particular page, which I'm going to drop in into chat so you guys can have a look at it. It's also, the article is also linking it to the mowing devil, which is near me. So the mowing devil is the first ever alleged illustration of a crop circle. It's actually more of an oval, and this was in Walken in Hertfordshire. So that's a stone throw away from me. And they didn't kind of like put it down to anything like UFOs or aliens, because they didn't have that vernacular in medieval times, because this is kind of like 1500s. But the illustration shows what they perceive to be a mowing devil carving an oval shape, what we might call a crop circle, in a field. And on the same page, they're also kind of saying, is this Fedori from the Centrinians of the Isle of Man? Are they kind of linked in some way, which would kind of like indicate perhaps this is a phenomena that's all over the UK?
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah,
That doesn't have a strange report in it. Not a county in the UK. But unless you're collating them and put them all into one place, there's hundreds of witnesses out there who've never spoken to each other.
Yeah.
And I would imagine there's people out there who've never shared their story yet. You know, it's been kept within the family or whatever. People are coming forward more. But it is a big ask in the UK. I mean, you know, it is a big ask to come out in the UK and say that you've seen something that's 7 foot tall and looks like an egg. I know.
There was a recent report that I saw on Truth Proof of this guy that used to live in High Wycombe, which Ben and I know, and Andy knows as High Wycombe, because I used to run my paranormal meetup group there. And this guy in the 70s used to live there. He now lives in New Zealand. He had an encounter with what he considered to be the Green Man in High Wycombe. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's very old thing. Pubs call the Green Man, don't you? And it's like
it's an old pagan deity.
Yeah, I do a lot of events, psychic events at Greenman pubs.
Half human, half plant. Almost. Yeah,
That's what I saw though, Ben. I saw, if that's the leaves, I saw this. And that's how the Green Man's predicted. There's a case in Bartra, very similar to mine in Yorkshire. Same time period, 1980, young girl, 15, wagging it to a school with a friend. And they were playing on an old abandoned sewage works of all things. And she said that they noticed a man that was laid down in the grass and he was using the leaves to hide his face. And she said the second he saw him, a friend did what I did and run in the opposite direction. She said, I didn't feel any fear. I went to walk towards it and it shook its head at me. It was to say, no, don't come near me. And she described it as using the twigs and leaves almost to disguise itself, like a natural camo kind of thing. You know, can you imagine being 15 though? Because now we've all got analytical adult brains. We can go through the list and we can try and work out what we've seen, can't we? But a young victim, as I see them, someone under the age of 16, I don't think you're taken seriously anyway because you're a teenager or you're a young kid. But I do. I listen to him because I shouted from the rooftops. I just wanted to be able to prove to people that I wasn't lying. I wasn't telling a lie. That's what I saw that day. And that's the effect that it had on me. I didn't take my children camping. I grew up. My parents were travellers with a mortgage. So we were always out in the woods somewhere. My dad would be fishing, we'd out horse riding or whatever it was we were doing. And I stopped that. At 15, that stopped for me. I just refused to do it. And I didn't do it again until I was 35.
Right. I think we're drawing to a close here, folks. So thank you, Deborah, for taking part in our brief interview. Thanks, Ben and Andy, for joining us once again. And Deborah, as we're drawing a close, where can people find out more about you and the stuff you're researching?
I made it really easy for folk. It's just Deborah Hatswell. So if you put Deborah Hatswell YouTube, I'll pop up. Deborah Hatswell Facebook, I'll pop up. I thought it was the easiest way for the people to find me. And if you want me to come back on and tell you about my husband's UFO experience, then you'll have to invite me back on again.
Definitely. We definitely would have you back on later on, either in this year or next year. That'd be fantastic.
Would he
they
speak
can-
to us? Would he come and
Yeah,
speak himself?
probably.
Would he?
I thought you actually so, yeah. Probably.
That'd be interesting to hear. Yeah, cool. All right, lovely. Thank you very, very much indeed to Deborah for joining us and sharing us some of your stories. I know you've got plenty of more. And if anyone's interested or wants to share some stories with us, please do contact us at the Paranormal Peep Show. And so thank you once again to everybody for joining us. That's Ben and Andy and Deborah and myself, Neil Ward, signing off on this edition of the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we'll see you next month. Good night.
No.